Hello friends, this is Liz Cabrera and I am doing my presentation on community-based family services for the city of Chelsea, Massachusetts. The purpose of my pilot study was to determine whether there were enough community-based services for families living in the city of Chelsea. The reason why I chose Chelsea is because I've been working in that city since 2011. It's a great city, and it is also predominantly Latino populated, and I want to eventually, for my larger project, I would like to understand what are the reasons why youth from this area, as well as the Boston Public Schools, drop out of high school. This pilot study looked at information from the census.gov website to determine the number of residents that fit the fragile family category, and then compare that to the number of community-based services in the area. Fragile families. So fragile families is a term that is being used to categorize parents with children who are born out of wedlock. They're called fragile families because these families generally lack the human capital as well as the economic means to adequately sustain a family. This was a definition that was established during the Fragile Families in the American Welfare State research. The Child Trends Data Bank states that the number of children under 18 years of age living with two married parents in the period between 1960 and 1998 decreased from 85 to 68%. In 2005, this figure, however, was at 65%, which is still very high. A study by the Child Trends also pointed out the increase in the number of children born out of wedlock from 5% in 1960 to over 40% in 2012. The article Strengthening Families, which advocates for policy changes around this subject, points out that one of the main chief concerning characteristics of fragile families is that the parents are generally young, impoverished, and who themselves have experienced high levels of poverty, poor childhood development, and schooling. So this is a graphical representation of the system of care. It consists of all the services that can be of benefit in supporting fragile families. More often than not, fragile families are at least involved with one of these services, but the goal would be to have as many of them as possible so that they can be supported in their efforts of strengthening their parenting capacities. So collecting data. In order for me to calculate the ratio of the fragile families and the services available, I used online surveys. So I created the surveys using Google Forms, and these were emailed to 18 providers that serve the city of Chelsea. But only 2 people responded. So here is a few of the sample questions that I used in the survey. The clock is almost 4 minutes, so I'm not going to go through this, but the survey had 20 questions and it was divided into 3 sections. Section 1 looked at the services that the agency provided. Section 2 looked at the program's capacity for accepting new clients. And Section 3 asked questions regarding a personal view of the survey participants, which would have been the providers. That's what it was intended for. So the data analysis, since I didn't get any data, I started with just writing a description of measures book. This was similar to the coding that we did in qualitative research, and this would have allowed me to apply numbers to the answers that I was getting in order to measure the data. Statistical test. Since I was just looking to understand the services that were currently available, I think that the most appropriate test, oh my God, it's 5 o'clock. Okay, 5 minutes, would have been a descriptive. In the future, if I decide to use quantitative data, I would probably be using correlation or ANOVA test, but I will most likely go with qualitative because I prefer interviews and also focus groups. Consideration for future studies. Allow plenty of time for responses if you're using online surveys. Send reminders to participants to complete the surveys. Send more than what you can expect to receive back, and consider other methods of data collection, secondary data analysis or qualitative data research using interviews and focus group. Secondary data analysis, I think, is good because you can regulate, you can control it more than surveys. And that is all, folks. Thank you very much. I'm sorry I went over by 1 minute. Thank you. Good night.